We are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. I'm so excited for this session. We have Esther White with us from Maths Australia, and we're talking about how to be your child's best maths teacher. Now, this is an area that I didn't think we would struggle with because my kids were, quote unquote, good at maths in early days, but it's been actually such a point of friction trying to then me learn it and and I thought I was okay at math. So I didn't realize that this was going to be such a sticking point for us, and like how much really friction in the home that it can bring when there's fighting against doing maths because we need it. So I'm so grateful to have you here, Esther. I know you have an incredible approach to this and philosophy around it, and so I'm just going to hand it over to you and just be soaking it all up with my journal. So welcome, Esther, to the summit, and thank you so much for being here to teach us all about teaching our children maths.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thanks so much, Annalise, and welcome to everybody who's here. My absolute joy to be here. I mean, one of the pieces, if I think of my own journey when I, back in the year 2000, decided to home educate and had 5 daughters that all had very different learning needs and were very close together. Like I had basically one a year for 5 years and had to find a way that would make maths easy for me to be able to teach and easy for them to be able to understand. So when I actually saw this approach, I mean, many of you may have heard about Math-U-See. When I heard about it, I actually saw a video of somebody teaching this approach and was just so excited that I could actually teach maths. And, fast forward 23 years and my daughters have all left home. And I'm really in a place now going, how can I actually support parents to have the confidence? Because I think that was a really big thing that I saw, having confidence to know how to teach maths, where as a collective in our world, we almost think, some kids are good at maths, some kids aren't. We've excused the fact that we don't teach maths in a way that we would teach anything else. And so really today, what I'm hoping to give to you, and what I'm hoping is that you'll fully engage, like have a paper and pen, if you've got any coloured pencils with you, like a pink and a yellow and possibly a green, if that's possible. If you can actually grab those and a piece of paper, because I'm going to go through, as I said, just a little bit about this part of you actually being able to be your child's best maths teacher. And I can say this with confidence because I'm going into schools now and teaching tutors based on, a lot of research that I've done as well over the last 23 years, but going into schools and supporting tutors to be able to teach students effectively and really being able to share with you the deeper understanding that I've had that means you can actually be the best teacher that your child could ever actually have and the best maths teacher. And I know that sounds possibly not possible or even in your framework at the moment, but I really invite you to go on this journey just with me for this next short time to see the opportunity that you have. And at the end of the talk as well, there are a couple of there's a series of emails that I've put together that just talk about maths anxiety, if you're aware that that's a real thing for you or for one of your children. And then also a couple of discounts that we've got on parent training. And but I'll share that with you at the end. I really ask you to, even though you've not paid for this, to really turn up as though you've paid. It's like really recognizing time is precious, your time is precious, your child's time is precious. You have, like, I can talk from me coming from now, my youngest is 23, my oldest is 29, and knowing that time that we have to homeschool them, the time that we have to teach them. And, when you look at the way or the reasons that you chose to homeschool, generally it includes that you want the best for your child. So I really invite you, I'm not sure if, Annalise, whether I can see the chat, but if you, even on Facebook, like if you can just put into the comments, what was the reason that you chose to homeschool? And I'm just going to talk about this a little bit because it's really important for us to understand, you know, whether it was we had a life philosophy that we wanted our child to understand that they weren't getting at the system that they were in, whether it's because you wanted to, you just would like, I would just love to spend time teaching my children, whether it was, you know, they're really struggling at school and I basically have to, whether they're being bullied or whether they're just struggling and coming home thinking, I'm not good at maths, I'm dumb, maybe I just don't get this, it's not mine to do, all of those pieces. Really important to identify what were the parts that meant you have a motivation to give your child the best. And particularly, basically what I want you to see is with you having made that choice, you've made a choice to be also your child's maths teacher. And often, like in our culture, we tend to be much stronger on language and literacy. So, you know, I've seen friends and myself time and time again where we're like, let's pick up a book, let's read a book, let's read about geography, let's go on excursions, and the physical and the literacy base, but often numeracy is something that I'm not sure if any of you can attest to this, but this part where we avoid maths or we just tend to get a workbook and go, we'll just work through this workbook and, you know, hopefully we'll do better than they were doing at school. Or we just look at the plethora of programs that are around and sort of bunny hop from program to program. And what I want to share with you today is this researched and evidence-based way of teaching that actually supports you and your child to learn maths easily and for them to be able to walk out of their homeschooling going, I have everything that I need to be able to not only do maths, but enjoy it and have so much confidence in how I can apply it in my life. So how does that sound? I hope it's like super inspiring for you because, you know, as I said, my daughters have left home. You have a limited time with them. You really do. And, you know, when they're 23 to 29, I can't teach them any more maths. I have to sort of take that responsibility themselves if they're needing to learn any more of maths or any other subject. So to grasp that component where you have time, you have limited time, there actually is a way and a very simple way of us teaching maths and them being able to understand and enjoy it and us being able to understand and enjoy it. So I really invite you to, in this short time that we've got together, to make the most of this, and we'll also have some time for questions and answers at the end. So Annalise is going to come back on later and relay any questions that might be in Facebook or wherever you are watching this from. Let me just grab a little sip of water. Great. So I'm just going to check my notes here. So what I wanted to share was just this piece. As I said, you know, I was on the introductory call with Annalise, and Annalise was talking about being intentional and seeing, you know, even this piece of us choosing to home educate, that we're choosing in that space, right at that moment that we make that final decision, we're choosing that we're going to be our child's maths teacher. And what I'm here to share with you is that you can actually be their best maths teacher that they actually have ever had. And I said, as I said before, I can say this with confidence because I'm going into schools now and seeing across our entire education system this part of maths, which you may have experienced yourself, where we teach procedures or we try to teach ways to get answers, and it just doesn't work. Like in our world and in our children's world, where there's so much information available to them now, there's so much vying for their time, vying for their attention, that there's a limited, we're seeing with research, that there's actually a limited amount of information that we can take in at one time. You may have heard of cognitive load theory, and I'll talk to that a little bit shortly, but this part where we can actually take research and take what has been known and is being proven now to support us to learn, we can take each of those components and integrate that into how we're teaching maths. So I'm going to go through a few pieces just to look at that and help you to understand that more. So let's actually look at this. I'm going to cover 3 particular concepts today, and I'm not sure if you're actually already on our database, but we send out emails every month. This year, for example, I've been doing a webinar that everybody is free to come along to. Sometimes I cover pieces specific to homeschooling or specific to particular research and talk about how the math you see and the training, particularly the training that I offer, actually enables you with that, and with following the sequence and the Math You See program, actually enables you to be this best maths teacher that your child could ever have. So if you want to write down the 3 concepts that we're going to go through, the first one is going to be that maths is actually a language. And this is a really, really key concept for us to understand. It sort of sets the foundation for how we're going to look at why we're teaching maths in this way. So if you think of a language, what I invite you to do is write down, what do you think of if I was to say even the word language? Like, what does that conjure up for you? What do you think of when you think of a language? And I'm sorry, I can't see the comments, but I'm just going to go on what I've heard before and what I know myself, is that when we think of a language, we think of something that's maybe from a foreign country. We'll often think of a language being something that uses specific symbols. And if you look at the definition of language, the definition of a language is a conventional, this is from, I think it's a Webster Dictionary, that it's a standardized conventional system of symbols that we use to communicate the world around us. So just think of that. Just think of the part, like if any of you know Japanese, for example. In Japanese, if you would use particular symbols that look very different to our A to Z in the alphabet of English, but they're very different symbols, and yet we still use those symbols to represent the same things that we represent with symbols of English, like the A to Z, here in Australia. So if we had a dog, so say if you had a little puppy dog and you all just from that word, and that word itself is actually abstract. So if you just think that that word has no meaning in it by itself, it'd be like if I said to you, collywoggle wash, that word means nothing to you because I've never walked you through a process where I've seen and touched and felt that. I've drawn pictures and representations and seen videos, and then I've gone to the symbols that I use to represent that and the words, so the sounds that I use. So if you come back to the example of dog, and I hope that's not getting too complex for you at the moment, but if you come back to this piece of dog, yes? So a dog, if I say those words are abstract. They have nothing, no meaning in them, apart from the fact that you've seen a dog, maybe the dog has been your best friend, you've touched it, you've felt it, then you've seen pictures or seen videos, you've been told that's a dog, and then those words that are abstract, that are just sound waves that come to your brain, have then been attributed meaning through you using particular symbols. I'm just going to see if I can change over to this other camera. But what I want you to do is write down the symbols that we use to represent the word, or that represent the dog. So let me just see if I can change this so I can show you what I'm meaning. Okay, great. So if I was to look at this, and I want you to see, here's this letter, my letter D or D. Just leave a bit of a space and write down O for O and G for G. What I want you to see is when I look at this symbol, Does that mean anything? That has no meaning at all in it, does it? This has no meaning in it whatsoever, and this has no meaning in it whatsoever. And if I combine all of these together, if I was just to look at those symbols have no meaning in them whatsoever. Do you understand this piece? Just if you can give me a thumbs up or let me know whether you understand just that little concept. And I know we're not talking about maths at the moment, but it's a really key piece for you to understand, because this is going to unlock for you why you or your children might struggle with maths. So those are in the symbols of English, de, o, ge, and we string them together. It's just the way that we do. We've randomly decided the D, the O, the G will be letters that we're going to use. If we put those letters together, they will represent the dog that I've touched, felt, and seen pictures of, read books to, seen videos. Now the symbols on the piece of paper conjure or make up or bring to mind a picture, one that I felt in my body first of all. So I've had a tangible experience and my body's memorized it. Also, I've visualized it. And if you think of, the best book that you read recently, the key piece and the success of that book was based on, could it enable you to be able to imagine what it was talking about? I was talking about this with a dear friend of mine who was talking about the Lord of the Rings, the books by Tolkien. And he said to me that when he read the book, which he'd read every year, would read this series of books to his children, when he read that book and then saw the movie, when the movie came out, he said there were actual scenes in the movie that were exactly how he'd seen them when he was reading the book. And that's pretty profound, actually, if you can think of that. But basically, it's this piece where we know that image and our ability to see something is a key component of our understanding, of our integrating, and of our having confidence in something. If you think of one of the times maybe when your children, wanted to learn how to surf, or like I know for myself, had this wonderful example when I was down on a property when we were actually homeschooling, and I wanted to learn how to make a quilt, like do some quilting with, quilting material and just beautiful quilts that I'd seen. So I wanted to learn how to do this. And I got some books from the library, and it was great because I saw books and I saw pictures, but the ability to actually make the quilt and the confidence that I had to make the quilt only came when I went to a quilting course. It was a one day, we were making this thing called a quillo that was like a link between a quilt and a pillow that could be folded up together. And basically me sitting there, the person saying, hey, do this, do that, cut this piece, get your sewing machine out, do this bit. That with the visual, so my body memory with the visual, then meant that when I went home, I was able to confidently repeat that. I could communicate it with other people. Even now today, I would be able to make that quillo because I'd walked through each of those components. So the first concept that I'm wanting to talk to that in this piece is that maths is a language. It has specific symbols that we use to represent the world around us. So even those, the letters that we wrote down in the language of English, what I want you to do now on your piece of paper, and I'm going to go over to this camera again, what I want you to do is write down on your piece of paper the symbols that we use in the language of maths. If you just take that concept that they're just squiggles on a piece of paper, they have no meaning whatsoever, let's just write down any symbols that we know about mathematics. So as I said, I'm going to pop over to this other camera again, and I'll just rub this out. So hopefully you'll be writing down symbols like 0, 1, 2, 3, a plus sign maybe, a multiplication sign. So I'm just going to stop with these. And what I want you to look at, even as I point to these, just have a really clear think about this and see, is this actually teaching me anything? Like if you were to look at this symbol here, this 0, that's the abstract word that we use to represent this little symbol. If you were to look at that, it wouldn't tell you that there's nothing there. So 0 can represent nothing. It can also be used in numbers like 305, and that 0 has a whole lot of meaning in it. And there's a whole lot of space in here. It's not telling me that there's nothing there. If I said how many horses do I own? I own 0 horses. That doesn't tell me anything about the fact that I don't have any horses in my backyard. This symbol doesn't tell me that I have one. I mean, somebody said to me once, it does. If I look at it, like if I've got a pen, or if you look at the pencil that you've got, yes, that's that shape, but that only is accurate if it's a pen or a long skinny thing, like a pen, a pencil, something like that. This could not show me one elephant or one horse or one dog, one of anything. In the symbol itself, there's no meaning. So just let me know if you get that piece, because that's a really key piece. I mean, even if you look at a plus sign, if you saw this sign out in the middle of nature or, you know, on a track, and you didn't have any clue what this was, you would not think I'm bringing 2 numbers together to see what are they the same length as. I would not say, you know, 3 children and 2 more children came to play with us. How many children do we have in the backyard or in the swimming pool? We would not think this symbol would enable us to work that out, or this one for multiplication. So I'm just going to come back to my camera here. Okay, so the key piece that I want you to see from this and to really grasp is that those symbols that maybe you've been trying to teach your children how to manipulate these symbols. You know, we teach adding, we use the word adding even, and it's such an abstract term. It's like it doesn't tell me anything until I create context. So that part where those symbols themselves are actually symbols similar to DOG in any other language, or, you know, Japanese symbols or French symbols or Yiddish symbols, whatever language you speak other than English, or even the language of English, that similarly, the symbols that you're using to teach maths are just squiggles on a piece of paper and have no meaning whatsoever. And if you start to grasp that, you'll see why your child might really struggle with mathematics. I mean, try to put a Japanese symbol or 3 symbols in front of them and teach them or expect them to understand, if you put this and this together, it's going to be the same as that. If you can grasp this piece, you'll see maybe this is why my child's struggling with maths, with adding, with subtracting, with multiplying, because they're just random numbers. And, you know, often what happens is we go and try to teach by rote. So we say, oh, we have to learn multiplication facts off. You just got to learn them. You know, how many of us have said that? You just need to learn them. I don't care what it takes. Just commit them to memory. That's what you're needing to do. We have to know these for life. What I'm going to share with you, like even when you look at those symbols, I'm going to walk through a little process now to show you that when you have a manipulative, and the word manipulative we use to, I mean, it's a funny word, but we're manipulating, we're moving it around, we're having a physical experience. We want to have a manipulative or a teaching tool that's going to be accurate and that's going to be able to be used, research actually says, for a minimum time period of 3 years. And the reason that they say that is because we want the student to have confidence and know the tool, so that every time we introduce some new maths component, we're not needing to reteach the tool that we're using. And you'll see, I mean, if you come and join me for a parent training or Math UC or the more in-depth training that I offer and that I teach, you'll see this part where we actually can take every component of maths, whether it's whole numbers, and we can build rectangles. That's all we're doing. I mean, you must know, like, your kids can build rectangles. And what we're doing is we're actually making sense of the rectangle, and we're using that rectangle in these blocks that stay consistent. So, you know, not a block that maybe doesn't have any marks in it, like Cuisenaire rods, where it's just this blank piece of wood that's coloured. It's not like that, and it's not like blocks where the colour changes. So 2 might be pink, or it might be yellow, or it might be blue or something. We're going to have a consistent representation, similar to, you know, a dog is an animal. It's got 4 legs, a nose that's out the front, a tail that's out the back. That's what a dog is like. We're basically going to say a 2 is 2 units joined together. It's a particular colour. I can feel each of the units on it, but that's what 2 is. So I want to show you this because it's a really key component to see we can actually have a consistent tool that enables our students to be able to then learn maths. And we're also going to look at this part with a language. You know, if you think of how you teach a language, you wouldn't start with something very difficult. You always start, and we're so aware of this as home educators, we've got to identify where is our student up to in their understanding in the sequence. What have I got to build on? You know, what have I got to build on? What have I got to work from? What are the basics that are in place that I can then build on from there? So really key component to be able to teach in a sequence, and to say, for me to teach, for example, multiplication, I have to know how to add. For me to be able to teach subtraction, I have to know how to add, because subtraction is the inverse or the opposite of addition. Like if I know that 3 plus 2 equals 5, 5 minus 3, or what's the difference between 3 and 5, or what number plus 3 equals 5, they're so interconnected that mastery of the addition enables understanding of the subtraction. Okay, so I'm just going to go to this other camera because I want to show you just this part where we're going to create a link between what we touch and feel and see, and then we're going to draw a picture or a representation of what we've built and touched and felt and seen. And then we're going to write the abstract symbol. So if you've got a green pencil with you, or a green pen and a piece of paper, we're just going to walk through this very simple process here, because I'm wanting you to be able to really grasp that these symbols, as I said, they're merely squiggles on a piece of paper. They will create no understanding. We have to create context. So let's go to this. Okay, so here we have, remember we had our, let me get my pen. Remember we wrote down this symbol here. We had the numeral 1. Yes? Let me just going to remove the mirroring, sorry. Okay, there we go. So we have the numeral 1, and you know we can write it like that, like this, however we want to write it. We're going to actually say this is 1. So we're going to talk about this as 1 unit. And as I said, we're going to build this. Basically, we've got it, we can feel it, we can close our eyes. It's hollow on the underside. It's got these little bumps around it. This is 1. What I want you to do then, and I know you haven't had the opportunity to necessarily touch this, but what I want you to do is draw a little square and colour it in the green. Then I want you to write either in any colour pen, or I'm just going to write it in green because I've got that now, the numeral 1. So you'll see, as I said, either write it in white or So let me write this across. So basically what you've established, this is the concrete, as if I had the dog that I touched, felt and seen. This is as if I took the picture books and showed videos and showed ways of representing it. This is me drawing a representation so that now when I get to this or this, whichever color I'm using, this symbol, or as I refer to, squiggle on a piece of paper, now has some meaning behind it. Whether this is one dog, one banana, one apple, 1 kilometer, 1 liter. When I see this symbol, it refers to this. Now I'm going to show you another one. So look at this one here. Can you tell me what this one is? It's 3, isn't it? So if you've got a pink pencil or a pink pen, I want you to draw. Imagine you'd had this, you touched, felt and seen this. Now we're going to draw a representation, but it has to be proportionately accurate to this as well. So we're going to draw this about like that, yes? And I'm going to color it in pink. Now I'm going to write the numeral that I use, or the abstract form. Let me take this out of the way, just so we can see this easily. Okay, so here we have our, so let me move this board. So here we've got our concrete, what I've touched, felt and seen, and I can even, feel this. I could close my eyes. I could feel this and feel that's got 3 units on it. I could even get 3 little units, put them on here. But this, that's also hollow on the underside, and you can see these pieces. This is 3. And I'm going to, as I said, we're going to draw the representation. Then I'm going to write the squiggle or the numeral that I use to represent this. But do you see from this that this 3 is merely, as I said, it's just a squiggle that I use to represent this 3 block that's the same as 3 units joined together. Similarly to, as if I had, let's go back to our dog example. Here's our dog. We've built the picture, we've touched, felt and seen it. We've drawn a representation. Now this squiggle has meaning behind it. So what happens, let me come back to here. Okay, so what happens when we don't walk through this process? The student has nothing to tag it to. So the 3 symbol or the 1 symbol is purely abstract. Please try and get this in your mind. It's just as if I gave you Japanese symbols and told you this means that. And many of us might have experienced that at high school, where we just had to memorize what the French word was for dog. The beauty of that, though, was that we already knew what a dog was. So now when we saw those symbols, we could attach meaning. So really key piece, and it might seem overly simple, but it's a critical piece to see. And what I invite you to do next time when you're looking at a maths question, or even as you're thinking now about maths, if you think of these symbols, every symbol that you think of in a maths question, your 3, a plus sign, a 2, an equal sign, a 5, each of those are just codes to represent reality, to represent the 3 block, the 2 block. We bring them together. They'll only ever be the same length as the 5 block. So if you can grasp that piece, it's just a language. You're teaching how to put into code form or encode, and then you're teaching how to take from the code form out to everyday life and being able to apply this. That's the key piece. And that's the beauty that you can do, as I'm sharing with you in the parent training and in the Math UC program, that you can actually use that understanding of maths being a language and teach it sequentially, teach it with a foundation in the hands-on manipulative. If ever I have any questions, I'm going to come back to the blocks. The blocks will never lie. The blocks will always show me. And we're using this awareness of color as well to be able to differentiate. I mean, I was thinking about this recently. Somebody was like, you know, why would we use that consistent color? And how else do we use this color in our everyday life? If you think of our entire money system, it is based on color. You know, a $5 note that's tiny, tiny little bit smaller than a $10 note, hardly recognizably different. It's the color that tells us primarily that that's a 5, that's a 10, that's a 20, that's a 50, that's a $100 note. So it's like really recognizing we use color to represent things or to understand our world. We look outside, there's a green tree outside that looks like a beautiful, healthy tree, as opposed to if I saw a brown tree or something that was like dead, I would recognize certain components through color. So we're using those two pieces, color and our need to touch, feel, and see, to be able to represent and explain the world around us. I'm just going to go to the next piece. So the second concept that I wanted to talk about was that we learn through our senses. And this won't take quite as long for us to establish. But if you think of your senses, like what would they be? They'd be our ability to hear. So we're talking about maths, we're talking about integrating it in our everyday life. Our ability to touch, and we learn so much through touch. You know, our entire ability to be here as a spirit in body form is through our body. So our body is our key learning tool. Even if you think of some experience where you might have felt hurt by something or offended by something, or something's been a shock to you, you've felt it in your body. So your body is like, I sort of liken it to this walking memory bank. So if we use that, we know that that's a key component of our learning, of all these different learnings for all of these different parts of our worlds. That touch is so critical. And so then the other component where we use auditory, so our auditory, our touch, our visual, so with the blocks and with us walking through this process of building and then drawing the representation, then writing the symbol, we're visually seeing it, we're hearing it spoken about, we're touching it, we're feeling it, and there's also movement involved. So if you want to write down multisensory, there's this little, 4 little letters that are often referred to. So the VAKT, the V being for visual, the A being for auditory, so we hear it, the K and T being for kinesthetic and tactile. So the kinesthetic is it's more movement involved. The tactile is me being able to touch it. But all of those are necessary for us to be able to learn something and integrate it, not just as something that I've had to memorize that's not linked to anything, more as this piece where I have this full understanding and it actually becomes knowledge that I can take into my world. So that's a really key piece, is making components multisensory. If I can share another example, I remember when we were living on this farm in Victoria, and one of my daughters, my oldest, Bethany, was enamored with horses. She was one of these little ones that had been born with a love of horses. She would have horses in her dreams. She would draw pictures of horses, like anything that was to do with horses. She didn't want anything to play with other than little horses, and her dream was to own a horse. So that was one of the reasons why we went to live on a property from living in Brisbane. So this part where I understood this, and she had, 4 little sisters that also loved Bethany and loved what she loved. So I saw a unit study approach of homeschooling. And basically we said, well, okay, horses are going to be simple. We're going to ride horses, so we have PE. We're going to read stories of horses, so there's language. We're going to use horses in maths. We're going to count horses at the local stockyard. We're going to Gosh, what else? Look at the geography of horses. Like, where did different horses come from? Why is one called a Shetland and another one called a thoroughbred and another one called a saddlebred? And all of these components, going, where did they get these names from? So that was the geography. And then when we looked at science, like Bethany was drawing quite intricate pictures and labeling different components of horses, whereas the younger one was just drawing a picture of a horse. And maybe learning, you know, these are the hoofs and this is the mane and those components. But the key thing that I wanted to share with you was that learning that they had, because it was so integrated. And when we look at our next piece that I want to talk about, this part on cognitive load, they're saying in education that for a child to actually take something and put it into their long-term memory, there has to be context. And there has to be a couple of other components we won't go into necessarily today, but a couple I will mention. But this part where there has to be context. So the horse that I've touched, felt, seen now, that I've looked at in all of these different aspects, and there's been an interest there, that's what's remembered. When I talk to my girls about one of the most fun times that we had as a family learning was when we did that unit study approach where that was based on their interest. So I just wanted to share that just in terms of seeing this importance of using all of our senses to understand and to know maths, and seeing the simplicity of it. That's what I want you to grasp, is the simplicity of it when we have a little block that we can use to teach adding, place value, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, and take that whole component with whole numbers where we're just going to build rectangles, we're just going to count, and we just have different levels of counting. Then now we can take that into when we're doing fractions and decimals and percents and algebra. We've just made maths the most simple language in the entire world for us to learn. And that's the key piece that you'll see is like, why did nobody make this easy before? And how come it's been not understood or misunderstood? This part where we know how we learn, we know that we learn best by touching, feeling, seeing, experiencing our world, yet it hasn't been brought into the world of maths. So that's really the key piece that I'm hoping you're grasping, is this opportunity to actually, one, make maths easy, and two, take all of the knowledge that we have of how to teach a language and bring that into how we teach maths really easily and really simply. And the key piece that happens when it's easy and simple, and when your students are understanding it, then they start to light up. They start to be excited about learning maths. They're like, you mean it's this easy? Like, how come nobody told me this? And then they can progress at a pace that they can go at, which is one of the beauties of your homeschooling. They can progress at their pace, understanding and learning and filling in gaps that might be there, or, you know, establishing foundations in this language that we're actually teaching them. Okay, let me just check my notes just to make sure that I'm covering everything. Okay, so let's go to the third component that I wanted to look at today, or the third concept, and that was just this part about cognitive load theory. And it builds a little bit on the first concept, which was that maths is a language. The second, that we actually need to learn, or that we do learn through all of our senses. And then this third component of cognitive load theory. And many of you might have heard of this, but basically it says we can take in a limited amount of information at one time. That they've actually scientifically shown that it's about 3 to 8 pieces of information at one stage. So this can actually, when I was doing some research on this, I just saw this could totally transform the way I'd homeschooled. You know, this part where maybe I was giving too much or expecting too much to be understood at one time, and chunking it down into smaller little pieces. So the science actually says that we can only, whether we've got learning differences or whether we're, you know, what we term as neurotypical, that with any of us, we can only take in between 3 and 8 pieces of information at one time. Now, if you can let that sink in a little bit, you go, wow, so I better make sure I teach an understanding of this before I progress to the next piece. So the best way I can explain this, if you've not heard about this, is I was just thinking of this example. Basically, say I wanted to teach you the word horse, but you'd never seen the letter H, O, R, S, or E. So the first thing we would need to do before we could teach horse and create some understanding of it is I would have to actually show you how to write the symbol or the letter H. And even if you think about that, you know, there's a stroke down, there's a stroke up and around and down. So there's 2, maybe 3 pieces of information just in being able to write the symbol H for horse. So when we're first teaching a student, we have to chunk it down and show this bit of information, then this bit, then this bit. That's 3 pieces of information right there already. Then when we go to the next, and you know, some students, they'll grasp that information very quickly. Other students, that 3 bits of information will be all that they can take in for that lesson. And I know there must be some of you that have students that are really grasping components or understandings very quickly, and other students or other of your children that actually aren't, and that H has to be taught first, and that's all that's happening today, because that's all that we've got space for and room for, or within our ability to cognitively think and to be able to process that information. The other piece that I mentioned was that it's shown as well, for that to be able to go into long-term memory, we have to create context. So that's why, like with the blocks, we're going to build, we're going to talk about examples, we're going to draw the representations before we go to the abstract. And just as I wanted to refer to the parent training really came out of me seeing over the last 23 years and supporting other homeschooling parents to teach maths, and seeing, yes, you could pick up Math UC, but unless you understand why you're teaching this way and some of this theory behind it, you'll potentially approach it like, I'm just going to like copy this, you know, watch the video, read the manual, teach that lesson. You may not teach it as effectively. The Math UC talks about building, writing and saying, but doesn't talk about this drawing component that creates a really strong link for your student. And then also this piece where you need to have this bigger picture understanding and know why you're actually teaching this way. So important for us as homeschooling parents to have the confidence to go, whatever the world out there is saying, I know I'm actually teaching my child in the best way that I could possibly teach them. So let me just check my notes again. So yeah, just wanted to just reiterate those 3 components, that part where maths is a language, 2, that we need to learn through all of our senses. So, you know, be on the lookout for something, even a maths program that might say multisensory, and then they've got bits on a board or on a screen, and the students having to move things around on the screen. Very different to me actually touching, feeling, remembering in my body what a 3 is. As I said, this is 3. The squiggle that I use on the piece of paper, the numeral 3, is not 3. And if I teach to the squiggles, I won't create the understanding that this is what 3 is. Even if you think of this, for example, you know, 3 plus 1, if I'm doing any pluses or any addition, I'm bringing this together and I'm seeing what's that the same length as. It's only ever going to be the same length as a 4. It's never going to be 5, 7, 6, anything else. So we're really creating strong foundations to be able to understand that. And then, as I mentioned, this part on cognitive load, making sure that we're meeting our child at the place where they're at, giving them foundations that they can understand at a pace and in a way that they can understand it, and bringing in our understanding of how we teach anything, building sequentially, chunking it down, making it super simple for them to understand. So that's basically what I was covering today. I hope that was super helpful. There we are. Okay,
Hello. Cool. Oh my goodness. So good. And I love how this is seemingly simple once you actually know it. But I think, and one of the comments said it really well. Hang on, let me scroll back. Said it all makes so much sense. It's so easy to overlook the concrete and jump straight into the abstract, especially as adults who have so much experience with the abstract, so it's second nature for us. And I think that sums it up really, really well. Like, it's not a complicated concept, but we don't think like that because we are now so practiced with the code.
Yeah. It's like we've, I mean, even if you think about, I mean, most of us, when we think of maths and if there's some anxiety around it, or we're like, I don't know how to teach my child this, it's because we've gone to squiggles on a piece of paper. And when we can bring up, as I said, any child can build rectangles. Any parent can build rectangles. And to see that that's all we're doing in maths, we're building rectangles, and we're actually creating a way that we can learn and understand it, that anytime, like if I was to say to you, what's 12 times 15, most of you, I'm sure, would in your head get a piece of paper out if you didn't have a calculator. I mean, you might just go, I'm just going to get my phone out or my calculator out. But if you didn't have that, you'd get a piece of paper out either physically or in your head, write down the symbols, 5 times 2, 5 times 10. Hope that you remembered all of those little pieces. Hope that you remembered enough of them to be able to add them together and know that you had the right answer. There's so much room for error. Whereas if I'm teaching blocks, 12 times 15, I've got 12 across, 15 high, I've got 100, 5 tens, 2 tens, that's 170, and this little 5 by 2 matrix, it's 180. There's my answer. It's never going to be wrong. So that's the beauty. I mean, you're basically using our understanding of how we learn, taking it into the world of maths, using a simple tool that's never going to, as I said, all of whole numbers, even up to like a year 5, 4, 5 level, or if you were doing like a year at a time, about a year 5 level, we're only using this one set of blocks. You do not need a plethora of anything else. You're going to teach maths, understanding, and then just use one more tool beyond that to teach fractions and decimals and percents and algebra. It's like, it's almost like a maths hack. If you think of life hacks, it's like, this is a maths hack that, even when I'm out in conferences and integrating with or communicating with the world of academia, it's like they still haven't got it. They're looking for something complex, and then you go, let's just get blocks and build. And my child can do that, and they can actually love maths.
So then in that example that you gave with the 12 times 15, if they've done that with the blocks, I'm guessing then they can then just imagine the blocks for whatever it is.
Yeah.
Is that the beauty of it?
Yeah, that's the beauty, is that they'll work with the blocks initially, and then they're basically creating pictures, taking photographs, so that, I mean, we do this. If I was to talk to you, if you'd been on a ski holiday in New Zealand and I started talking about skiing, you would see pictures of yourself in New Zealand skiing down the slopes, anything else that you can imagine learning. We do that. We create this body memory. We see images. We learn by pictures. Then the abstract are just squiggles that now those symbols have meaning. It's like you wrote a story or a letter to your mum or a letter to your grandma about the ski holiday that you had. You're just putting it into words, but you know what that was about. That's never going to be any different.
Yeah, okay. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, that's going to be, I need 3 pink ones and I need this. Oh, that's so amazing. Okay, for me who's so visual, yeah, that would be so helpful.
Yeah.
So
I
then,
just saw the comments, so I hadn't been seeing, but they're all here for me to see. But
that's
yeah,
okay. There is
what
one
I,
question.
yeah.
And I think what we kind of just talked about asked kind of covered that. It said, do you prefer it to be 3 single pieces or one where there's 3 cubes together? But I think
Yeah.
the point is more about color, right? Or you tell me.
No, it's actually both. So this is a part of understanding the transition. So say, for example, if I had 3 of these little blocks together, that would be fine, but it would only be teaching counting. It's almost like, even if you think of a number line, for example, and we use rulers or number lines or, dots or buttons or something, the key piece of it is, though, if I keep on referring to this and having to have this as my representation, and I don't move them into this part where, say, if I had 3 of these, this is my 3, then I'm going to basically just keep reinforcing counting. And counting is so limited. We want to basically, if you're familiar with the math you see, and actually in the training, the math you see doesn't talk about counting so much, but in the training we talk about counting and going, we need to learn 0 to 9. Those are the numbers in our maths base 10 decimal system, 0 to 9. We need to count them individually. They're just words. We need to, they call it one-to-one correspondence. I need to be able to point to this and say 1, point to the next one, say 2, point to the next one, say 3. So that component, and then when you look at it and go, to be able to progress from there, if I'm wanting to teach 3 plus 2 and my child's using their fingers, there's so much talk about, let's use fingers to count. Great, fingers are great, but they're limited. I only have 10 fingers and 10 toes. So what do I do when I'm beyond 20? And do I want to keep having my child go back to 3 plus 2 is 3, 4, 5? It's so slow. It's like, basically the third lesson, as I was saying, our third lesson, after we've taught counting and then place value to hundreds, tens, units, our third lesson needs to be, let's understand the blocks. This is a 4. It's 4 units joined together. That's what 4 is. We use a squiggle to represent it, but now that I've got that understood, now I can go, well, what's 4 plus 3? I'm just bringing these together. It's only ever going to be the same length as a 7. So let's get a 7 block out and check it. Is it? Visually, I can see that. With my abstract words, I know that. I can draw a picture of it. I can write the squiggle on the piece of paper. 4 and 3 is only ever going to be equal to 7. If you look at your equal symbol, it's 2 lines that are the same length as. It's basically what I'm doing. I'm building 1 line here, putting a 7 line here. It's like the code, the symbols actually teach me something. There's some, like in our operation symbols, we can actually attribute meaning. So really key piece, Annalise, is the part where we're actually going to progress them at like 3rd lesson in grade 1. Our children should be learning addition and then being able to multiply. If you think of somebody being able to multiply, they can't be using fingers to count. Then you're just going to teach strategies or ways to get answers that have no meaning in them whatsoever, that don't support them to learn greater concepts or to have confidence in there. But, as you said, you've drawn and built a multiplication of 12 times 15. Now I can see it. I can visualize any of those numbers, any multiplication. Now when I write it in the abstract, I've got confidence behind it. I know what my answer is. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's exciting when you start to see it. It's like, you mean maths could be like the easiest language in the entire language and entire world to learn, and the most fun because it's so consistent. All of you are home educating. That's you true. Know how complicated the English language is. The English language is just like way out there in terms of, German, Yiddish, like all of these languages in the world. So yeah. Almost conglomerate to create the language of English, and there's all these rules and exceptions to rules, but maths, this is 4, this is 3. If I add them together, they will never be anything other than 7.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really
I'm laughing because just before this we were doing a reading lesson with my daughter, and we're doing, home and things like with the O
Yeah.
sound with E on the end, and then like the word come came, and I'm like, it's not
Yeah.
home, it's
Yeah.
not. I'm like, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so
I mean, I
yeah,
remember,
so yay to consistent rules.
yeah, I remember teaching my daughters phonics and these exceptions to the rule, and I basically just went, there are more exceptions to the rule than there are the like lineups with the rule and accuracy with the rule. So yes, we'll learn some of it this way, but we just need to find a different way, because I don't need you to memorize all of the exceptions that are more than the ones that are actually accurate. So yeah.
Yeah, so it's the joys. And how does how do we then move to division for that? Or is that all in the parent training? Maybe you can just kind of give a taste of how to think about that, because division is the thing in our house that like takes, like 5 days for one page kind of thing. Whereas everything else is like, I'm doing it, but division, I'm like, it's going to be a hard day.
So if you take on those pieces, and great question, take on those pieces that we're just building rectangles. If you think of, if you think of even multiplication, so basically for division to be mastered, there has to be mastery of multiplication and an understanding of multiplication. Because say, for example, if I know 7 times 8 is 56, if I've got 56 and I'm dividing it into 8 equal parts, how many do I have? I've got 7, because I know it's like, and if you think of a rectangle, let me just actually draw a picture here. I'm not sure if this will help. Where's my pen? I'll just show you a very simple one with the blocks. Let me come over here. Okay, so say, for example, imagine I've got my 3 blocks, yes? So I'm just going to draw this here. Here's a 3, and if you look at this here, it's 3 across and 1 up. Yes, you can see that.
Yes.
And then if I put another 3 on top here, and sorry, I don't have blocks. I've just come back from Melbourne and I left my blocks down there. So here's another, I'm drawing a representation. So here's 3 across and 2 up. So this factor is 3. This is 2. You can see I've just built a rectangle. And if I want to see how many square units there are in here, how many do I have? I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But, I know 3 plus 3 is 6. Here I've got 6 square units. When I think of the abstract, so keep that picture in your mind, this is how I write it. Yes, I write 3, which was my across factor. My little times sign is telling me I'm counting fast, and we sort of teach about this, but this 2 was my up factor. I want to know, if I was to put them together, what will it be the same length as? So imagine this is referring to this part and this is referring to this part. So here I've just written in abstract what I built in the concrete. If you think of what I just drew before as well, and just think of these symbols. This is one symbol I can use to represent multiplication. We'll just keep it simple like that. But imagine I had a rectangle, and I'm just going to write this here. Imagine our division symbol. So this is just a symbol that I use to represent that I'm dividing and to tell me that I'm dividing, yes?
Yeah.
So this, imagine, this comes from, how much? I'm just wondering how much to go through. But imagine this is just a symbol. This is telling me, basically, if I draw this smaller, this is telling me I have 6. So I know that I've got 6 blocks. I'm dividing it into 3 equal parts. How many do I have? It's as if you think of the other symbol that we use for division, here's my 6. I could write this like this, yes? Same question. When you look at this, it gives us a little hint because it's actually a little rectangle. Imagine I just dotted this down here, across here. This is the same. If you think back to the picture we just drew before, this was my 6 in here. This is a little bit different, but because we can, just turn rectangles around. Imagine this was 1, 2, 3 here. So my up factor here is 3. I know I've got 6 inside here. What's my cross factor going to be? Oops, sorry, can't see that very easily. So if you see this bit, can you see if I built this rectangle with my blocks, this would be as if I had a 3 block this way and a 3 block this way. But inside here, I've got 6 square units. So I'm just building another rectangle. But because I know 2 times 3 or 3 times 2 is exactly the same as 6, then if I have 6 back here and I'm dividing it into 3 equal parts, or I'm building a rectangle where, I'm building a rectangle where this is my product, this is one of the factors, what's the other factor? It's a little bit, if I had the...
It all starts with the multiplication, right? Really?
It's for division, yes. Division starts with multiplication and understanding I'm just building rectangles. So what I'd encourage you to do, Annalise, like if you're looking at a very simple division question, try drawing, even if you don't have the blocks, try drawing what you've done. Like try drawing 6 divided by 3. Put the 6 in a little rectangle. Imagine you had 3 on one of the sides and think, how many of those 3 would I have to do of my little across factor to have 6 inside that little rectangle? Because that's all you're doing. You're just building rectangles and representing that rectangle in a different way. Before, with multiplication, you knew one of the sides and the other side. You had to find out how many were in that. In division, you know how many are inside that particular rectangle. You know one of the other sides or factors or dimensions. You just need to find how many of that are there. So if you know from multiplication how many of this make this, then you'll be set up to be able to teach division.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you've taught me about the blocks, because I've been doing like circles and dots, whereas that's not consistent. Whereas this is blocks, they're all the same size.
Yeah.
And so you sell the blocks, right, in kits?
Yeah, so we sell the blocks. So we actually, as I mentioned, started with Math UC. So I'm still distributing the Math UC program, but the blocks that we've had developed are actually about a third of a size bigger than the Math UC, and they click in like Legos. They're actually Lego sized as well. So they're much stronger, and they are much more consistent. And as I said, lock in and you can build with them a bit better, because that can be frustrating for some kids as well. So so we sell them, and I just wanted to invite people today. I actually was like, what could I offer to people? And I mean, this part of me being so important for me, that homeschooling parents, that we understand why and how. So actually I'll share with Annalise, maybe Annalise can share this, but basically that we'll have a discount. At the moment, the parent training is $99. It actually is a series of short videos that go through the key components that you need to have, whether you're using Math UC or any other program. Really brings in this understanding of what research says, and particularly when we're looking at intervention. But basically, I wanted to offer that while the summit is on, that there's a $60 discount on that. So just for $39.
Oh my goodness, Esther.
For that. And then afterwards, that if somebody was to purchase the complete set with the manipulative and the level at the stage your student needs to go through. So basically, we have free placement tests online that whether you're using this program or not, I encourage you to have your child go through, because it will help you identify where in this sequence, you know, rather than saying you're on grade 5, we're just going to do grade 5 material. It's really understanding if you don't have the basics, we're just going to create confusion and anxiety and make you feel bad about doing maths, rather than saying, let's start here, fill in these gaps and give you everything that you need to be able to progress beyond. So I'm going to also say if people do purchase that complete set, then they'll actually receive the parent training as part of that at no cost for that set. So a couple of things. I'm just really happy to be able to be part of this. And
very generous offer, Esther. Amazing. Because we need this, right? We really do need our children to be able to do maths. Like, it's not something that we can ignore. We have to get to it at some point. And if we can do it in a way that there isn't the friction, where they do enjoy it, and we, like, when you said enjoy, like understand and enjoy, I was like, oh, that would be nice. Like, because at the moment it's just like it's a chore, right? It's like doing the dishwasher. Like, they don't want to do it. But if they can understand and enjoy.
I really saw this. Like, I had a friend who years ago was just had a very large family. She was looking at using Math UC, of like, oh, we can't afford it, and we're not going to do it. We've already just bought these other materials. We'll come back to it next year. And I asked her and invited her to test where her children were at the beginning of this year. So she did that, and then we did a test again 12 months later, and they'd not progressed one single bit. So it really showed me, and, you know, time and time again, where I see students, whether they're homeschooling or at school, and we think, you know, we've ticked the box, we've taught maths, but if we're adding to their stress or just teaching them in a way where we're just teaching to squiggles and there's no understanding, it's probably like you and I. Like, I remember when I was first looking at maths and homeschooling, I tested myself in this sequence of instruction and saw that even though I'd done, you know, maths 1, maths 2, had ducked the math class, my actual understanding when I was coming to teach my children was at what we would refer to as like a year 7 level, primary maths understood, none of the upper material, because I'd just been taught how to get answers. And I really saw this, I have a friend who teaches literacy with the Australian Dyslexia Association. And she said to me, you know, I love my job and what I'm doing now, but she said, I would have actually loved to be a scientist, but I just didn't have the maths and the confidence in maths to be able to get into the science degree. And I think that's really the piece to look at, to go, it's really our responsibility. If we're taking on homeschooling, it really is our responsibility to give our children the best that they could have in maths. And when we think about anything we want them to learn, they have to have maths and English. It really should be like the key pieces, because if we've got mastery and understanding of those, we can learn anything else that we would love to learn. So, you know, I really encourage you, if you're thinking of, oh, let's just like put aside the maths for a bit and we'll get to it, or, you know, those pieces, it's like actually invest in having manipulatives that you know they'll be able to understand maths with, and you know you'll be able to use them for, you know, 5 years. I mean, if you look at costing even, you know, we still have people that I've still seen, you know, locks that are being sold by somebody who's used them for 15 years and they're still in the great condition because of the way they've been made, still being able to be used. So sell them for like $20 off what you bought them for. It's like, that was such an amazing investment. And even the instruction material and both of those components are non-consumable. So they can be used down through the children and that sort of thing. But yeah, just really invite you to, if anybody has any questions, just reach out to us at Maths Australia. Either myself, Esther at Maths Australia, or info at Maths Australia, and Bethany will get back to you.
Yeah, and they've got the link here that's on the screen now that will guide you through if you are feeling overwhelmed and anxious about this. This is a free series of emails that will, how many, 5 emails that will guide you through and help take away some of that overwhelm and anxiety.
Yeah. So it's about 5 emails. And just invite you to look at where does that anxiety come from yourself, and to see that there's actually a way to overcome that and work through that and change it completely for yourself and for your children. So, yeah.
Got Elsa visiting me. Apparently, whatever I set them up with for an hour is like lost its
gone. Awesome.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for that, Esther. That's
Awesome.
like just, yeah, I had high expectations because I was really looking forward to it, and you totally blew that out of the water. So thank you very much. I know that everyone's here got so much value, and if you're on the replay, still post your questions here. Esther's here. Esther's coming back again next week to talk more about how you can use this concept in teaching maths to start your own tutoring business. So if you're interested in that, come along to that next week. But Esther's here for the summit. So like use this while you have this incredible resource in front of you, and ask all of the questions. You can see how generous Esther is with her time and her knowledge. And so she really is here to support us in making this an easier part of what we're doing. And yeah, thank you so much for that. This one comment in
here. You're welcome. Yeah, and the coupon code is just be the best. But yeah, maybe I'll send that and share that with Annalise so she can share it with everyone. So
sure, I'll put that in the comments and in the top of the caption, so you can see that there. If you can't find it, DM me and I'll pop it in email as well. But thank you very much for that generous offer, and we'll see you later at the summit.
Yeah, thanks, Annalise, and thanks everybody. Really hope that was supportive. And as Annalise said, just feel free to reach out. Really here to support you and make it simple to teach maths effectively and to enjoy it while you're doing it as well. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay.